After completing the system's mission, I was given a choice. I could return to my real world and take the reward of 10 billion, or I could stay in this world permanently. Without hesitation, I chose to stay. The reason was simple: Tina. She was the second female lead of this story, a woman who had spent 10 years loving the male lead, Christian. In the original story, Christian never chose her. After everything ended, she was left alone. Over time, we grew close, and she fell in love with me. When the system was about to leave, I told her the truth about everything: the system, the missions, and that I originally came from another world. I also told her something important. If one day she stopped loving me, the system would erase my memories and take me back to my real world. Tina held my hands tightly and promised me with a sincere smile that it would never happen. She said she would never change her heart. I believed her. Soon after, we got married. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Our marriage seemed perfect. Tina was a famous actress admired by millions, but at home she was gentle and caring. She always treated me warmly, and I believed she loved me deeply. However, everything began to change the day of the accident. That day, Tina and I had planned to go skiing together. But at the last moment, she said work had come up and she couldn't go. So I went to the ski resort alone. While skiing down the slope, someone suddenly crashed into me from behind at high speed. The impact threw me violently to the ground. I felt a sharp crack in my arm and an unbearable pain spread through my body. Through the pain, I heard a familiar voice shouting anxiously, "Christian. Are you okay?" My heart froze. I struggled to lift my head and saw Tina rushing toward the man who had knocked me over. She helped him up immediately and checked his injuries with obvious concern. That man was Christian, the male lead she had loved for 10 years. Because I was wearing ski goggles and a face mask, Tina didn't recognize me. Instead, she coldly told her assistant to handle the injured victim and pay whatever compensation was needed. Without even looking at me properly, she helped Christian and hurried him to the hospital. Meanwhile, I lay on the ground with a fractured arm, the pain in my body nothing compared to the pain in my heart. Later, I was taken to the hospital for surgery. My arm had a minor fracture that required surgical fixation. I needed to stay in the hospital for observation. The assistant who discovered the injured person was shocked and wanted to inform Tina immediately. However, I stopped him. I told him there was no need to tell her and asked him to just take me to the hospital. Still, the assistant eventually called Tina to inform her that I had been in an accident. But he didn't tell her that I was the person injured at the ski resort. Even after hearing about my accident, Tina never came to visit me. She stayed by Christian's side the entire time. Half a month later, I woke up in the hospital. My head felt strangely empty. Tina's assistant was standing beside my bed, guarding me. I looked around in confusion and asked him why I was in the hospital. The assistant seemed surprised by my question. He explained that I had been injured at the ski resort and had been hospitalized for treatment. Then he cautiously asked if I remembered anything. I tried to recall what happened, but my mind was blank. The assistant looked shocked and asked another question. Today was the 10th anniversary of my marriage with Tina. Did I forget that too? His words stunned me. For 10 years, that date had been engraved in my memory. Yet now, I couldn't remember it at all. Just then, the door of the hospital room opened and Tina walked in. She smiled warmly and said she had come to take me home. She apologized for not being able to stay in the hospital because she had been busy with work. Her tone was gentle as she held my hand and asked if I was angry with her. Tina promised that she would cook my favorite dishes that night to make it up to me. Looking at her affectionate expression, it seemed as if nothing had changed between us. But deep down, something felt different. In the past, even if I accidentally cut my finger while cooking, Tina would worry about me all night. Yet this time, after I had been injured and hospitalized for half a month, she had only sent her assistant to take care of me. The distance between us had quietly begun to grow. Later that day, I returned home alone because Tina suddenly said she had work to deal with. That night was supposed to be our wedding anniversary, but she left me by myself. While sitting in the empty house, I casually opened my phone and saw a post from Christian. He had posted a photo of himself dining with Tina at a restaurant. The caption read, "10 years have passed and you're still by my side." My face turned pale as I stared at the photo. So the work Tina mentioned was actually having dinner with him. As I continued scrolling through Christian's posts, I saw that many of them involved Tina. Photos of them holding hands, spending time together, and moments filled with ambiguous intimacy. One post from half a month ago caught my attention. Christian wrote that he had been knocked over while skiing with his girlfriend. Although his injury was only a small scrape, she insisted that he stay in the hospital so she could take care of him around the clock. At that moment, the memories of the ski accident suddenly rushed back into my mind. I remembered everything clearly. That day, Tina had rushed to Christian's side while leaving me behind. She had taken him to the hospital while I was left alone with a broken arm. Tears slowly slid down my face. No wonder I had been forgetting more and more things recently. It turned out that Tina's heart had already changed. The system had begun to erase my memories. That night, I sat by the window for a long time before finally speaking softly. "System. I give up. I want to go home." Very soon, the familiar cold voice of the system responded. "3 days later, when your body dissipates, I will take you home." Hearing those words, I closed my eyes quietly. 3 days. That was all the time I had left in this world. That night, I fell asleep without waiting for Tina to return home. My heart felt strangely calm after making the decision to leave this world. Sometime in the middle of the night, I felt someone hugging me from behind. Tina had finally come home. She pressed her face gently against my back and spoke in a soft voice, asking if I was angry with her for not waiting with me or calling me before going to sleep. I kept my eyes closed and quietly replied that I was just tired. Tina sighed and explained that work had ended late and she couldn't come back earlier. She promised she would make up for it tomorrow by cooking the big meal she had promised for our anniversary. Listening to her words, I remembered the photo Christian had posted earlier that evening. The image of them smiling together in the restaurant flashed through my mind. My emotions became tangled, but I didn't say anything. After all, I would be leaving this world soon. Whether she lied to me or not no longer mattered. The next morning, Tina dragged me to the wardrobe in the bedroom. She asked if I remembered where her white fishtail dress was because she wanted to wear it to an event that day. I looked at her blankly and slowly shook my head. I truly didn't remember. For the past 10 years, I had always been the one organizing her clothes, remembering every detail of her wardrobe. Yet now the image of that dress simply didn't exist in my mind. Tina frowned and crossed her arms. She asked if I was still angry because she didn't stay with me in the hospital or because she didn't spend our anniversary night with me. She explained again that she had been extremely busy with work and had no choice. I quietly told her I wasn't angry. I simply forgot. When I mentioned that the system had erased my memories, Tina's expression immediately darkened. She said I had been using the same ridiculous excuse for 10 years. According to her, a system that could erase memories and take someone away simply couldn't exist in the real world. Her words made my chest tighten. It turned out she had never believed my explanation from the beginning. She never thought the system could really take me away. After a long silence, I finally spoke again. "If you still love Christian, we can get a divorce." The moment those words left my mouth, Tina's eyes widened in anger. She accused me of being petty and unreasonable. She admitted that she had loved Christian for 10 years and couldn't completely cut ties with him, but she insisted that he was only a friend now. According to her, she had only been paying more attention to him recently because his marriage had problems. Then she looked at me with disappointment and said I was her husband. She asked why I had to be so narrow-minded and jealous over something like that. After saying those words, Tina burst into tears and left the room without waiting for my response. I stood there quietly, staring at the closed door. If things were truly as she said, then why were my memories slowly disappearing? The answer was obvious, but she refused to admit it. The pain in my body gradually worsened over the next 2 days. It felt as if the system was punishing me for choosing to stay in this world for so long. Early the next morning, the system's voice appeared again. It informed me that the day after tomorrow it would arrange a car accident for my death scenario. I was told to prepare myself. That evening, Tina returned home with Christian following behind her. She held my hand and said Christian wanted to check on my injury, so she had brought him over. Tina then went to the kitchen to cook and left the two of us alone in the living room. As soon as she disappeared, Christian's expression changed. A smug smile appeared on his face as he looked at me. He casually mentioned that my injuries looked serious, but then added that injuries didn't really matter. What truly mattered was who Tina loved more. He reminded me that during the past few days, he had only suffered small scrapes, yet Tina stayed by his side the entire time. Then he asked if that made me feel sad. I looked at him coldly and asked if he had come all this way just to say that. Christian laughed and admitted that he regretted rejecting Tina in the past. Now that her feelings for him had returned, he believed he still had a chance to win her back. He even offered to pay me money if I was willing to give Tina back to him. Hearing those words, my mind went blank for a moment. Many memories about Tina had already disappeared from my mind. I could barely remember the things I had done for her over the past 10 years. Christian continued talking arrogantly, saying that Tina had loved him for a decade and that all he needed to do was lower his head slightly for her to come running back. Before I could respond, he suddenly shoved me aside and jumped straight into the swimming pool outside the villa. He began thrashing around in the water while shouting for help. The impact from his push caused me to fall heavily onto the ground. My fractured arm immediately sent waves of intense pain through my body. Just as I struggled to get up, Tina rushed out of the house after hearing the commotion. Without hesitation, she jumped into the pool and pulled Christian out of the water. Christian coughed weakly and pretended to smile bitterly. He said I might have misunderstood his intentions and accidentally pushed him into the pool. Tina looked at me with disappointment in her eyes. Although she didn't scold me directly, she told Christian that I was sensitive and often overthought things. She then asked him to stay the night because he was injured. Without even looking back at me, she said Christian would sleep upstairs while I should use the guest room. Christian glanced at me with a triumphant smile. From beginning to end, I didn't say a single word. The pain in my body had become so intense that even breathing felt difficult. As I watched Tina support Christian and walk away, I realized there was no longer any need to explain anything. The woman who once panicked whenever I was hurt now chose to believe another man without hesitation. Perhaps everything had already ended long before I realized it. After Tina took Christian upstairs, I forced myself to stand up despite the sharp pain in my arm. Every movement felt like knives piercing through my bones, but there was no one left to help me. Slowly, I walked back into the living room and searched for the first aid kit. I opened drawers and cabinets, but strangely I couldn't find it anywhere. Just as I was about to give up and return to my room, Tina suddenly appeared in front of me. She was holding the first aid kit in her hands. It was obvious she had just used it to treat Christian's injuries. When she saw the blood on my arm, her expression changed slightly. She hurried over and tried to support me, asking if my wound had opened again. She told me to sit down so she could treat it. I quietly moved my arm away from her. "There's no need," I said calmly. The pain in my arm was nothing compared to what the system had already done to me. Tina pressed her lips together tightly and looked at me with frustration. She asked if I was trying to get back at her because she made me sleep in the guest room. According to her, I was acting childish and refusing her help out of spite. Then she defended Christian again. She said Christian had always treated me sincerely and didn't deserve to be pushed into the pool. I looked directly at her and answered calmly. He jumped in himself. For a moment Tina froze. Then she let out a cold laugh. The disappointment in her eyes became even deeper. She said she was begging me to stop lying. According to her, neither the system nor Christian framing me existed. She insisted that she loved me and that love would never change. Hearing those words, I lowered my head and remained silent. At that point, there was no meaning in arguing anymore. She had already chosen what she wanted to believe. After finishing bandaging my wound, Tina immediately left the room without saying anything else. As my memories continued disappearing, even the pain in my heart slowly faded. The only thing that grew stronger was the pain in my body. That night I fell asleep from exhaustion. When I woke up again, the system's notification appeared before my eyes. Host, there are 2 hours left before you return home. I walked into the living room. The villa was completely empty. Tina and Christian were both gone. A bitter smile appeared on my face. It seemed fate had decided that we wouldn't even meet one last time. I gathered all the things Tina had given me during the past 10 years. The love letters she wrote, the photos we took together, and the memories I once treasured. Then I burned them all. After finishing everything, I went to the Riverside Bridge. The system's countdown had already begun. As I stood there quietly waiting for my death, I suddenly saw Tina and Christian in the distance. They were laughing and talking as they walked toward a car. For a moment, I wondered if the system had made a mistake. But the next second, the car suddenly lost control. It rushed directly toward me. The impact was violent. My body was thrown into the air before falling off the bridge into the freezing sea below. In the final moment before I lost consciousness, I saw the horror on Tina's face as she realized what had happened. I also heard her desperate scream calling my name. A self-mocking smile appeared on my lips. I never expected that the death arranged by the system would end with me dying in front of her. Then the system's cold voice echoed again. Host, death scenario completed. Returning to the real world. Back in the real world. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting in an office. For a moment I felt completely confused. Then the sound of a school bell rang outside. A colleague beside me asked why I was spacing out and reminded me that it was time for my class. Only then did I remember everything. In my real world, I had been a teacher. Years ago, I had died suddenly from overwork in my office. That was the moment when the system had taken me into another world to complete its missions. Now I was back. Life quickly returned to normal. I continued teaching students every day just like before. One afternoon, while passing by a park, I noticed a small boy in worn-out clothes standing alone behind a tree. He was quietly watching other children play. I walked over and asked why he didn't join them. The boy lowered his head and said they didn't like him because he didn't have a mother. When I asked about his father, the boy suddenly burst into tears. It turned out his father had cheated on his mother and disappeared. His mother had run away afterward, leaving him behind. He had been living with his grandfather, but his grandfather had died 2 years ago. Since then, the boy had been completely alone. Hearing his story, I felt a heavy weight in my chest. I gently patted his head and told him he could stay with me from now on. Later, I completed the adoption process and gave him a name. Felix. I hoped his future life would be happy and full of possibilities. Felix was a very obedient child. He often helped with housework and always noticed when I looked tired. For a while, life felt peaceful again. I thought everything about that other world was finally over. But one night, deep in the darkness, the system's voice appeared again. Its tone sounded weak and unstable. It told me that Tina had completely collapsed after my death. She had done many reckless things that destroyed her reputation and caused chaos in that world. Because of her, the balance of that world was slowly breaking. The system asked me to return and fix everything. In exchange, it promised to give me double the wealth. I looked at the sleeping Felix beside me. After a long silence, I finally spoke. I'll go back. But Felix comes with me. The system immediately agreed. The moment I picked Felix up, a wave of dizziness overwhelmed me. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing on the same overpass where I had died. Felix woke up and looked around in confusion. This is another world, I told him calmly. There's something I need to finish here. It was already past midnight when Felix and I arrived in that world again. Everything around us felt strangely familiar. Even though I had once died here, time seemed to have continued normally. Since I had no money and nowhere else to go, I decided to return to the villa where Tina and I had lived for 10 years. My fingers entered the password automatically, as if my body still remembered it even though many memories had disappeared. The door unlocked quietly. I led Felix inside and took him to the guest room on the first floor. The house was silent, which meant Tina was probably already asleep. I didn't want to meet her in the middle of the night, so I told Felix we would talk about everything tomorrow. After making sure he fell asleep, I lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The thought of seeing Tina again stirred complicated emotions inside me. I couldn't tell whether I felt anger, sadness, or nothing at all. The next morning, loud noises outside the room woke me up. Someone was arguing in the living room. The sharp sound of a glass shattering echoed through the house. I quickly got up and opened the door. In the living room, Tina was throwing things in anger. Her face was twisted with frustration, an expression I had never seen before. She was yelling at the chef for making the wrong breakfast. The chef stood there trembling, explaining that he had followed her instructions exactly. But Tina didn't listen. She smashed another cup onto the floor, shouting that it wasn't the food she wanted. The butler standing nearby suddenly noticed me. His eyes widened in horror, as if he had seen a ghost. "Mr. Allen, you're not dead?" His words made Tina freeze instantly. For a moment, she didn't dare to turn around. Then she scolded the butler harshly, saying he was talking nonsense. According to her, if I were really alive, I would have come to see her immediately. But her voice trembled slightly. After a few seconds of silence, I finally spoke. "Tina." The moment she heard my voice, her body stiffened. Slowly, she turned around. When her eyes met mine, tears instantly filled them. For a moment she stood there in disbelief, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she suddenly ran toward me barefoot, ignoring the broken glass scattered across the floor. "Alan!" She threw herself into my arms and held me tightly. "I knew you weren't dead. I knew you would come back." Her voice trembled as she kept apologizing over and over again. She said she didn't see me on the bridge that day and didn't know the car had hit me. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. Only then did I notice that the glass on the floor had already cut her feet. Blood slowly stained the white floor beneath her. I frowned and picked her up without saying anything. Carrying her upstairs, I placed her on the bed so I could treat her wounds. While I bandaged her feet, Tina continued holding onto my arm tightly, as if she was afraid I would disappear again. "I know the truth now," she said. After I fell from the bridge, she had checked the surveillance footage. Only then did she discover that Christian had pushed me off deliberately. He had lied to her from the beginning. Tina blamed herself for believing him instead of trusting me. She said she had been stupid. After 10 years of marriage, she still doubted me. Tears continued flowing down her cheeks as she begged me for another chance. She promised to cut all ties with Christian and said she wanted to start over with me. But when I looked at her, my heart felt strangely empty. After a long silence, I finally spoke. "We're already over." Tina stared at me in shock. I told her that my memories of our relationship had already disappeared. From the moment I saw her again, I felt nothing. Not even when she cried. Her face slowly turned pale. She refused to believe it and asked how I could forget everything we had shared over the past 10 years. She reminded me of our wedding vows and the promises we once made to each other. But those memories no longer existed in my mind. Before I could say anything else, Felix suddenly appeared at the doorway. "Dad, what are you doing here?" he asked curiously. He ran over and hugged me tightly before looking at Tina with confusion. "Who is she? Your girlfriend?" Tina froze completely. Her eyes slowly moved from Felix's face to mine. Her voice trembled as she asked a single question. "Is this your child?" The despair in her eyes was impossible to hide.